Hello and welcome to Novel Ponderings with Catherine Hall and me, Catherine Arthur. This week we're talking to Helen Winter, who's just released her debut novel, Friends in High Places. Do join us. Hello everyone.
Hello again.
Nice to see you.
Hi Helen, welcome to the podcast.
Hi both. Thank you.
And congratulations on your book launch.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely brilliant. Fabulous book. I'd recommend it to anybody. Really would. It's for everybody to read this book. Everybody needs to read it. And that cover it's probably one of my favourite covers, to be honest.
I love it. It's got such sort of simplicity, hasn't it?
So
and then the orange spine.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
So it's really, really beautiful.
Where did you get the idea?
I think, we talked a lot, didn't we, about what images we could use. And I think right from the beginning of talking to Catherine, we wanted something quite simple and effective, didn't we? And so the idea of just having that one simple image, and I think particularly, I don't know how clearly you can see that, but because it sort of slightly fades away, it's got that dreamlike quality, which if you read the story,
yes, it has.
It really goes well, doesn't it, hand in hand with the story itself.
Perfect. It just epitomises the book. It's beautiful. So, sometimes you can have a cover that's got absolutely tons and tons of images on it, and it can start to look a bit too busy, and you start wondering, what's this book about? Because you can't make out, there's just too many images sometimes. But I just like simple covers personally. But that's my preference.
Yeah, no, it looks great. I'm really happy with it.
And so what about the book? Where did you get the idea for the book?
Well, this book has sat in the back of my mind for about a decade. So it was probably about 10 years ago that it just started to germinate, if you like. And originally I sort of thought about a sort of screenplay idea. And the three characters have really been in my mind all that time. And I love writing characters and I love dialogue. That's just something I've always enjoyed doing. And for me, trying to get a hook for those characters is really important. So in my mind, my David was a sort of David Jason character. So my character's David Jenkinson. Hugh Grayling Moss was a sort of Hugh Grant character, and Piers Briggs is a play on the name Pierce Brosnan. Now, that's not necessarily when I started to, eventually when I was writing, that's not necessarily what I was thinking all the time. But for me, it was just a hook. It's where the names came from. I could have changed the names, but I didn't. They stuck. And so it really helped me just to sort of really picture those characters, get into the dialogue and really get to know and love those characters. And now all those characters, they get into your blood, don't they?
They do.
And what I'm finding now, thinking about that, what I'm going to write next is I need to detox this book, because it's been with me. It's taken me 2 years of research and writing, and now it's sort of like getting over a relationship or heartbreak or something, isn't it? You need to put that behind you, and you need to move on to the next thing.
Yeah, it's a very interesting way of putting it, actually, because the characters really get inside your head, and then you feel like you're living with them, and then suddenly they're not there anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And you become really fond of them, and the thought of having to sort of start again with a blank canvas, it's quite a scary one, I think, probably for all writers, isn't it? And I can understand why people perhaps want to continue characters on into the next books, because they, as a writer, we want to know what happens next, because actually, as you get into writing, your narrative, your characters start to do things that perhaps, I know lots of writers say this, and if you don't write, perhaps it's difficult to understand, but they do things that surprise you. Even when you're writing, you think, oh, I didn't expect my character to do that.
It's like, it's like when I'm editing, I get into the characters' heads while I'm editing, because I need to understand these characters, and I need to understand who they are, and what their characteristics are, etc. Everything really about the character. And that's one of the most interesting parts of my job. And when I get to the end of the book, I'm exactly the same. I feel like, oh, it's finished now, and it's so you have to calm down. You've literally been living with these characters for how many weeks, whatever, depending on how long the book is. And then all of a sudden, they're not there anymore. And then you've got to move on to somebody else's characters and it all starts again. And so it's a great job. I absolutely love doing it. But sometimes some of the books, you really do get in there and it's quite, I don't know what the word, it's quite sad sometimes, you think, oh, that's finished that now. Send it back, carry on.
I think from my perspective, as working with you as an editor, knowing that you were also very involved with the story with those characters, it's really important because in terms of say continuity, you might say, do you think that character would say that there, or why is that character use that word? Because it's really important that you're because I'm writing this book over a long period of time. It was 18 months probably of writing, and for me, sort of 60,000 words on, that's a long time from that first chapter, just in period of time. And so you need to keep the continuity of each character absolutely on to make those people believable. So to have an editor who's able to look at your characters and say, actually, should they be acting this way, or should they have said that, or why are they using that word, it's really important for me as a writer.
It is for anybody really, because when you are getting the characters' voices and you're in their heads, you're living with them as well, just like you were living with them. Do you know what I mean? Maybe not in the same way, because I'm looking at them from an outside perspective, whereas you've created these people. And so once I've got used to how they talk and the voices and what they do, then I can understand and I can think, hang on a minute, I don't think I could hear Hugh saying something like that. And that's when you start to question the characterization, so that's where those comments come in.
It's really interesting to hear you say that, Catherine, because there's been so much talk now about this relationship between editors and authors, and I think that just really brings it home how important the work of an editor is in keeping everything on track, rather than the author just sort of going off on a false trail, and because the characters evolve as well over the course of a book. So in your head, like you said, Helen, 18 months is a long time from the start of your character to the end, whereas an editor's only doing it in a week, and so it's much better, it's much easier for you as an editor, Catherine, to keep a track of where those characters have been and where they're going, rather than us. I'm also write as well, and I find the same thing, you have to keep going back to the beginning and saying, hang on, that's not my character.
We're really interested in your marketing skills, because you've got your book in a shop, haven't you?
So it's not a bookshop, but it's a gift shop, and it's doing well, and they've taken it in. As I think with self-published books, it is quite difficult getting those into some independent bookshops, often just because of the EPOS systems they use. It's not that they don't want them, and often they're really supportive and they like your book and they like the look of it, but they're just saying they just can't keep on top of independently supplied books, or they'd be having 50 different authors all over the place trying to keep track of stock. But they were very happy to take it because it fitted in with their aviation section, and obviously because it was about Concorde, they said they really liked the way it looked and they were really happy to have it. So and I've not finished with that. It's only it's really early days for me. And so I've got other plans of places where it might end up, and we'll just have to see what happens. And it's selling steadily as well online, and I've had some lovely feedback as well from people. So that's what makes it really worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So when the shop took your book, did you give them so many copies, or would they only take one copy?
Yeah,
or
they actually only take 6 of any book. And I sort of visited them on a whim and happened to just put 5 in my bag. I thought, just in case. and they took it then and there and priced it up, and it went straight on the shelf. So yeah, really happy with that.
Will you make anything on their sales?
So yes, I will do. So I've done it as a sale or return basis, which they were happy with, and I'm happy with. And they priced it the same as online, so no one's missing out. So at some point I'll pop back over and see how it's going. But as far as I've heard from them, that they've been selling well, so I probably need to restock fairly soon.
Fantastic. That's really fantastic. It's a local shop then? It's one of in your local village or town, wherever you live?
It's about 10 minutes away. And we do have some beautiful independent bookshops in the area, and there are a couple that I think might, perhaps in Wantage, I think there's one which is a market town, which I think is a possibility. And because the book is set actually in Manchester, that is another area that I'm sort of looking at next. I mean, it's not completely set in Manchester, but it's based around G. Boac, who is the Concorde that's housed at Runway Park there, which is where the majority of the action is set. So that is a whole other sort of area that I'm yet to tap into. But that's definitely on the list of where to go next with the marketing side.
That's a valid point, actually, to have things that are local. Because when I was trying to get my book into the library, I was told, no, we only take local authors. Well, I don't live in England anymore, so they wouldn't have it. It's self-published, and they will only take traditionally published books, even in the library. Whereas the local libraries around the place where I'd written, where the book's set, they were more than happy to take it. So I think having that locality and trying to get it in places where it's relevant to the story, I think that's really important. That really helps.
Yeah, and I think there'd be quite a lot of interest in the area. And I think the thing about Concorde is that we've all of us, those of us that remember Concorde, we've all of us got an emotional connection in some way. So, for example, I was at university in Reading back in the late 90s. And every day in my English lectures, we would hear Concorde come over, and the lecturers would all have to stop, and we'd all look up, and it was always amazing. It was never, no one was ever annoyed. It was always that, no, there she is. And I think we've all got that connection there, and it's not just about transporting wealthy people half the speed of traditional aircraft, although that is part of it. It's more about the sort of innovation and the fact that we used to be able to do this, and and people still have a dream about being able to do that again. And then the people that were involved, and there's something about Concorde that I think draws people in. She's quite beguiling, I think. And I think a lot of people have a connection with her, but you don't have to be a big fan of planes to read this book, because it's also really about the people and their stories and the intertwining of all their stories as well. So yeah, it sort of draws everything.
It is, yeah. I mean, you're hugely fascinated with Concorde. What was the research that you did in order to get everything correct? Because there's a lot of aviation terms in the book, isn't
Yeah, I read everything that I could get my hands on, really. I watched a lot of documentaries, some more interesting than others. If you look, there's all sorts out there. And I'm not saying that I understood everything that I read, but I understood enough to be able to make it believable. And even though the crux of the story is fantasy, it was really important to me that my technical content was correct, so that there was an underpinning of truth that made you believe it, or at least want to believe the story.
Isn't that the point of novels, is to take you away from today's world and into
Yeah,
something completely different? Why do we read? We don't want to read about what we're experiencing. We want to read about something that's unusual or different. So yeah.
yeah, I think that was really important, because I want to write to entertain people. I want to try and make people laugh. I also want to have a contrast of light and dark. It's not a completely light-hearted book. There are some heavier elements in there, and that was really important to me, that I get a balance between something a bit more humorous, and then perhaps the next chapter would be the absolute antithesis of that. And that's really important to me, that I have that light and that dark. So I hope I achieve that.
Do you think, talking about your next book, I mean, has it got anything to do with this one? Is it a spin-off or is it complete standalone?
At the moment, I am thinking, as I said, I'm still detoxing this one, and I would quite like to step away into something different. I'm not sure yet. I'm mulling a few ideas, but when I hit on something, I'll know, because I won't be able to get it out of my head. It will be, when you get a song word stuck in your head, you just know when you've hit an idea, because you won't be able to think about anything else. And that's that moment where you think, right, this is it, and that's start making the notes. And yeah, and I will start with lots of notes. For this book, I had huge book of research notes, and I knew more about my characters than ever came into the book itself. I knew when they were born, and I knew when they were all married, and when they had their children and their children's birthdays, just again for that continuity, to make sure that I didn't slip up in that way. So before I even start writing, I'll make sure I write notes.
Did you plot the book? Are you a plotter or a pantser?
I'm a bit of both. I'm a bit of both, flying by your pants. Yeah, I'm a bit of both. And I think there were places that I knew I wanted to get to, and I knew I wanted to get there, but I hadn't necessarily found the plot hook that I needed, and that came later. And I knew my ultimate ending. I knew what I wanted to happen. And then as the story grew and the more characters came in, at that point, then I could sort of start building that story around it, if you like. There was one particular thing that happened where I knew I wanted to get the manuscript done before Christmas. I wanted to get it to Catherine, and I had a day, an unusual sort of clear day to write, and I probably did about 6,000 words in the day, which is way more than I would normally do, because I'm a mum, I've got 2 teenage kids, and a really busy life, and it just doesn't happen. And then I got to the end of the book and realised that someone who was pregnant, who needed to have had their baby, hadn't had their baby. And thought, oh my goodness. And because there was just so many threads, and I had to go back, and then I had to rewrite, and of course that took time. But actually, I think that's really normal, because you are holding so much in your head. And it wasn't until I revisited it that I thought, right, okay, and then you rewrite, and that's just how it goes.
Yeah, and the notes, I mean, I just take notes all the time. I don't know whether that's how you work when you're writing a book.
Yeah, all the time.
All the time. And when I'm editing, I've just got a notebook all the time, and I'm just writing things down constantly. Some edits, I've got 4 or 5 pages of A4 of notes. Don't do this. Why have you done that? Sort of thing. I do get brutal, don't I, Catherine? She knows me.
Yes. No, it's okay. It's fine. I mean, I think that's what we need as authors. We need somebody to tread on our toes and go, "Hey, wait, just look at this again," What's your plan for marketing in the future? So you've got your book in a local shop, but what other plans have you got for
There
marketing?
are a few places that I was as yet sort of untapped. So I've got a couple of local bookshops in mind. I'm continuing to advertise online, and Manchester, I think, will be a big one. I've had sort of some exciting contact from sort of people who I've sent copies of my book to. So I won't say who, but it's gone to someone who sort of has a connection, and heard from him, and he's reading it next. So I think it's really important that actually to think outside the box as well, and perhaps send copies to people that might be interested in reading. I'm happy to do that. And if you don't hear anything back, you haven't lost anything. Sorry.
No, that's true. Have you got a website? Have you set up a website, or are you blogging, or are you on any social media?
Yeah, I'm on social media. So I've got my Instagram page and then my Facebook page, and I do post original content to those as well. Because actually, I haven't been hugely involved with the writing community online in the last 2 years, because I've been writing, and my window to write within my day was so small that I just didn't have the time to do that. But now it's actually really nice. There's some really nice people, and I've had some really lovely contacts already from people in that community, and it's a really welcoming community. And I think that corner of X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it is a nice one, and the same on on Facebook and on Instagram. There's just been some really nice feedback actually from most people.
On Facebook, there's a group called the Good Housekeeping Book Room, and every Sunday they will allow you to promote your book. There are 81,000 members of that. I don't know how many are active and how many are actually watching every week, but I think that's quite something to do every Sunday. Is just to log on to Facebook, join that group, and they're one of the rare groups that will allow you to post as your author, because I write under a pseudonym, and I don't want to post under my real name. I want people to know my pen name. And a lot of groups won't let you do that, but the Good Housekeeping Book Room will. And so that's, I think, one place where you could advertise your book every week, and maybe start posting comments to other people and about books that you've read, and get your face seen a little bit there. That's one place to, because with 80,000 followers with that group, that's quite a huge
It
group.
is, isn't it? I don't do Facebook, so I miss out on all this Facebook stuff. You'll never find me on Facebook. But you do, Helen. You have a really good Instagram account, because you put quite a lot of text underneath your images. When you put a post on Instagram, don't you? And it's interesting that, because not a lot of people do that.
I try to, yeah, and I'm going to continue doing that, and because I'm also just really interested in encouraging writers to find the time to write, because I think for me as a mum, it's that age-old thing, is finding the time, and everyone's busy, and I think there's something in all of us that just thinks, well, I've not got the time to do that. And I had a bit of a sort of seminal moment, if you like, where I heard an interview with Jojo Moyes, and she said, the difference between someone who's an author and someone who isn't is someone who finishes. And she said, it doesn't matter how long it takes you. And I think I had that thought that perhaps I had to wait until the roses were round the door, and I could sit in my rocking chair with a wicker screen and a cat, and and then I would write. And actually, you can just write where you are, and even if you only write 200 words a day, or you don't write for a week, or you write every day for a month, and then you do nothing for 2 months, it really doesn't matter. And I think shifting that change in my own head just completely revolutionized everything for me. It made such a huge difference, and that was how I was then able to write.
Did you find, though, because this is what I find when I'm writing, is that I write historical fiction, and I'm so deep in those worlds that suddenly then I've got to go out and do a teaching lesson. I've got a small school as well. It's like I'm driving around the road and I'm thinking I should be on a horse.
Yeah, I completely get that. And that's really difficult, because actually when you write, you're so engrossed, and it's difficult to explain, but you don't actually want to be in the real world. It's so difficult making transition. You're leaving some of yourself behind in that story. And, when you're writing like I was having to write, perhaps just for an hour a day. It wasn't enough, but I never had the time. But you also, I can't write when there's lots of people around me and it's busy, and it's really difficult to get that quiet time. So I completely sympathize with that, because that's exactly how I feel too.
I think a lot of authors are really hard on themselves. I see so many posts on X where they're just beating themselves up, and there's no need. We're all in the same boat at the end of the day. We've all got a book out there. We need to get it to a wider audience. And if we don't sell any one week, it really doesn't matter, because the next week you might sell 10. But I am seeing more and more posts now of people saying, with sad faces and crying emojis and things like that, I haven't sold any books this week, or no sales today, and that sort of thing. And I think sometimes, you need a thick skin to be an author. There's no two ways about it. If you haven't got one, I think really you're in the wrong job. You're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, I think because we put our heart, don't we, on a plate when we write, and actually when you have criticism, that is, you know, it's not like running a business that's criticised. It's you that's being criticised.
Yeah.
When I came to you, Catherine, and you said, you know, I can't remember exactly the words, but you said, I'm very honest. You know, what you see is what you get.
Brutally honest.
Brutally honest, exactly what you said. And I was really pleased about that, because, you know, you want to hear it. For me as a writer, I also want to improve, I want to get better, and I want the truth, and I don't want to be labouring on a project that is a dead donkey. I want to improve, and I want to get all those tips from you as well.
There's absolutely no point in doing a manuscript, you know, working on a manuscript, whether you're proofreading it or editing it or just giving it a read through. There's no point going back to the author and just saying, oh yeah, it's really good. Do you prefer a hard copy book, or do you like the Kindle?
I'm a sucker for the old school, the hard copy. Yeah, I love books. Yeah, the actual physical books are always piled by the bed. Yeah, not necessarily reading them all, but they're always there.
That's interesting, because I've just joined a book club at the beginning of the year, and the first couple of books I got on Kindle, and I found I didn't really get into them. And then the next one I got hard copy, and I realized actually I really do need a hard copy. I find that I read at night and it's tiring, and then I just fall asleep, and then I'm not really concentrating. But the book,
You're
it's
looking
better.
at the screen as well, aren't you? And it's that
Yes.
light, isn't it? What do they call it?
Backlight.
That backlight.
Yeah. Well, you can get a Kindle device which doesn't have a backlight on it, but I just feel that the book is more immersive. I don't know, somehow it feels like you're reading a book. When you're reading online, you could be reading Twitter or Facebook or whatever, X or whatever. You know, we read so much now with the social media that going to a physical book is a different type of reading.
And it feels like a break, doesn't it?
It does.
From online, and we read so much online. You think, good, right, I'm now going to have my time away from the screen, and I'm going to read a book.
That's exactly it.
See, I'm the other way. I'm a sucker for a Kindle. I love my Kindle. I've got tons and tons of books on my Kindle that are like on the to be read list, and they will be read, you know. And if I see a new one, I just download it straight away onto Kindle. And I've got Kindle Unlimited as well, so I've just got absolutely tons of stuff on there ready to be perused.
You just need a holiday, Catherine, to take away with you.
I mean, to be honest with you, you know, the Kindle, it just fits in my handbag, so it's really handy.
I'm not saying I would never read an ebook again, but I find that it's you know, they're very useful when you're in a waiting room or on a train or something like that, you know. But actually, to have the book in your hand, I just feel it is a different experience.
I've got shelves and shelves of books in this house. I mean, the ones behind me are all like editing and reference books and things like that, and all our main books are in the other room. But yeah, I love my Kindle. I really do.
I like the immediacy of it, the fact that you can get the book now. You don't have to wait a week for it to be delivered, you know.
Yeah, definitely. But then you go into an independent bookshop, and I must admit, I do love bookshops. You know, I love browsing and just looking and seeing them. And one day I'll walk in one and I'll go, wow, that's Friends in High Places.
Yeah, before too long, you watch this space.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you seem to be doing all right with that. I mean, you know, well done on getting it into that bookshop. That's a real big achievement in itself, because not a lot of authors do that. I don't think they realise that they can.
It was a bit nerve-wracking, but you've got to do it, because, you know, what's the worst that can happen? They can just say no. Well,
absolutely.
So what? At least you tried.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. I mean, your book would be great in you know, the gift shops at I think I've talked to you about this before. When you go to these RAF places like RAF Duxford, Cosford, we've been to loads, me and my husband, because he's ex-RAF, so we tend to just go to loads of them, and they always have a big gift shop. You know, the one at Duxford is huge, massive big gift shop, big selection of books. And I would seriously send yours, definitely.
Yeah.
Because I think
Put it on the list.
Oxford, where you've got the Concorde test playing.
And there's other ones. There's other Concords. There's one at Filton, and there's one down in Surrey as well at Brooklands. And I'm hoping to visit Brooklands actually. Over the summer. So yeah.
Cheers, Helen. Thank you very much for joining us. It's really good to speak to you.
Cheers. I've not got any left. Cheers. Really lovely to see you again, Helen.
Cheers. Thanks very much. Thank you. Bye. And you.